Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he checked the weather sensors for the third time that morning. The desert planet Kepler 442b was having another hot day, and the twin suns made everything twice as bright and twice as uncomfortable. He had been working at the small human research station for 8 months now, studying the strange plants that somehow grew in this dry wasteland. The station was small, just 5 buildings connected by covered walkways. Jake shared the place with 4 other humans who were also studying different things about this world. Dr. Lisa Carter was their medical officer and studied alien diseases. Ryan Phillips looked at the weird plants that grew here. Amy Brooks handled all their communications with Earth and other human colonies. Carlos Martinez kept all their machines working in the harsh desert environment. Jake was thinking about lunch when the sky suddenly lit up with a bright streak of light. He looked up and saw something falling fast toward the ground. It was not a meteor or space rock. This thing was clearly a ship, and it was in serious trouble. Black smoke poured from its back end, and pieces of metal were breaking off as it fell. "Everyone get to the emergency shelter," Jake called into his radio as he ran toward the vehicle bay. "We have a ship crash about 3 kilometers north of here." The other team members responded quickly. Lisa grabbed her medical kit while Carlos got the rescue vehicle ready. The small hover truck could cross the desert quickly and carry injured people back to the station. Jake climbed into the driver's seat and pushed the engine to maximum speed. The crash site was easy to find. A huge cloud of purple dust hung in the air where the ship had hit the ground. The ship itself was unlike anything Jake had ever seen before. It was not made of normal metal but seemed to flow and change shape even though it was badly damaged. The hull had a silver color that shifted to blue and then to green as Jake watched it. Jake parked the hover truck and grabbed his emergency scanner. The device could detect life signs and check for dangerous radiation or toxic gases. The readings showed 1 weak life sign inside the wreckage and no immediate dangers to humans. Jake called back to the station to report what he found, then carefully approached the broken ship. The entrance to the ship had been torn open in the crash. Jake squeezed through the twisted opening and found himself in what looked like a command center. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. In the center of the room, slumped over a control panel that looked like it was made of liquid crystal, was the ship's pilot. Jake had never seen anything like her before. The being was clearly female in shape but was definitely not human. Her skin was a pale blue color that seemed to have its own inner light. Patterns of brighter blue light ran along her arms and face like glowing tattoos. Her hair was white and seemed to float even though there was no wind in the ship. She was wearing clothes that looked like they were made of starlight itself. The scanner in Jake's hand beeped with urgent warnings. The alien was badly hurt with severe internal injuries. Even worse, some kind of disease or poison was spreading through her body. The scanner could not identify exactly what was wrong because it was designed for human biology, but the readings showed that she was dying fast. Jake knelt beside the alien woman and gently touched her shoulder. Her eyes opened slowly, and Jake found himself looking into pools of silver light that seemed to contain tiny stars. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a language he had never heard before. The sounds were like music mixed with the tinkling of wind chimes. The alien woman seemed to realize that Jake could not understand her. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, she spoke in broken Galactic Standard, the common language used for trade between different species. "Human," she whispered, her voice weak but still musical. "I am Princess Zarlin of the Ethereal Dominion, my ship, attacked by enemies from my own court. I carry important information that must reach the Galactic Council. Many worlds will die if this knowledge does not get to them." Jake's scanner beeped again with more urgent warnings. The princess was getting worse quickly. Her blue skin was starting to turn gray, and the glowing patterns on her arms were becoming dimmer. Jake could see that she was in great pain even though she was trying to hide it. "How long do you have?" Jake asked quietly. The princess looked at her own scanner, a device that looked like a piece of living crystal. "Perhaps 6 hours, maybe less." The nearest medical facility that can treat my species is 4 days away at maximum speed. I will not survive the journey. Jake felt his heart sink. This beautiful alien being was going to die, and there was nothing he could do to save her. The human medical station was not equipped to treat alien diseases or injuries. Even Dr. Carter, with all her knowledge, would be helpless against whatever was killing the princess. "I'm sorry," Jake said. "We will do everything we can to help you. But our medical equipment is designed for humans only." The princess nodded weakly. "I understand. I ask only that you try to retrieve the data core from my ship and send the information to the Galactic Council. It contains proof of a terrible plan that will destroy many civilizations." Jake looked around the damaged ship. He could see the data core she was talking about, a glowing sphere about the size of a human head that was embedded in the main control panel. Getting it out would take time and special tools. Time that the princess did not have. The princess seemed to read his thoughts. "Go," she whispered. "Save the billions who will die if this information does not reach the council. Do not waste time with one dying alien." Jake looked at her pale face and the fear in her star-filled eyes. He thought about all the people who would die if he did not get that information to the council quickly. He thought about his duty as a human officer and his responsibility to save as many lives as possible. Then he made a choice that would change the galaxy forever. "No," Jake said firmly. "I will not leave you to die alone." Jake carefully lifted Princess Zaralin from the wreckage of her ship. She was surprisingly light, as if her bones were made of hollow crystal instead of solid matter. Her breathing was shallow and quick, and the glowing patterns on her skin continued to fade with each passing minute. Jake carried her to the hover truck and made her as comfortable as possible for the ride back to the research station. Dr. Lisa Carter was waiting in the medical bay when Jake arrived with the dying princess. Lisa had converted the entire laboratory into a makeshift hospital room, pushing aside research equipment to make space for a bed and monitoring devices. She took one look at Princess Zarlin and shook her head grimly. "Jake, I have to be honest with you," Lisa said as she connected human medical sensors to the princess. "I have never treated an ethereal before. I do not even know if our medicines will help her or make her worse. Her biology is completely different from ours." The princess tried to speak, but a coughing fit stopped her words. When she finally caught her breath, she looked directly at Lisa. "Doctor, I understand that you cannot save me. Please do not risk making my pain worse by trying treatments that might harm me. I ask only for comfort in my final hours." Lisa nodded and adjusted the medical sensors to monitor the princess's vital signs without trying to treat her condition. The readings showed a steady decline in all her body functions. Whatever was killing her was spreading faster now, and there was nothing the human medical equipment could do to stop it. Jake pulled a chair next to the princess's bed and sat down. "What can we do to make you more comfortable?" he asked. The princess managed a weak smile. "Talk to me, please. In my culture, no one should die alone and in silence. Tell me about your world, about your people." Jake began talking about Earth, describing the blue oceans and green forests that covered his home planet. He told her about human cities with their tall buildings reaching toward the sky, and about the music and art that humans created. The princess listened with fascination, asking questions about things that seemed completely alien to her experience. As Jake talked, the other team members came to check on their unexpected guest. Ryan Phillips brought samples of the local plants that glowed in the dark, thinking they might remind the princess of her homeworld. Amy Brooks offered to contact the Galactic Council immediately to report the princess's location, but Zarlin shook her head weakly. "My uncle's fleet will come looking for me soon," the princess said. "They will find me here whether you call them or not. I only hope that when they arrive, you will have had time to retrieve the data from my ship." Carlos Martinez had been examining the wrecked ship with his engineering tools. He returned to the medical bay with bad news. "The data core is badly damaged," he reported. "It will take me at least 12 hours to extract the information without destroying it completely, maybe longer." The princess closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. Then we must hope I can survive long enough for you to complete the work." That evening, Jake remained at the princess's bedside while the others tried to get some rest. Zarilyn's condition had worsened throughout the day. Her skin was now more gray than blue, and only a few weak patterns of light still flickered along her arms. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes speaking clearly and sometimes muttering words in her own language that Jake could not understand. During one of her clear moments, the princess asked Jake about his family. He told her about his parents who lived on a farm in the American Midwest, growing corn and wheat in fields that stretched to the horizon. He described his sister who worked as a teacher in a small town school, and his brother who served on a starship exploring the outer rim of human space. "You are far from home," the princess observed. "Do you miss your family?" Jake nodded. "Every day, but this work is important. We are learning about new worlds and new forms of life. Each discovery helps humanity understand our place in the galaxy better." The princess was quiet for a long moment. "Your people are very young compared to mine," she finally said. "The ethereal dominion has existed for over 50,000 years. We have seen many species rise and fall during that time. Most of them disappointed us with their selfishness and violence." "What about humans?" Jake asked. "What do your people think of us?" The princess looked at him with her star-filled eyes. "Most of my people consider humans to be just another primitive species that will eventually destroy itself. You have only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. Your technology is basic and your governments are unstable. Many ethereals believe that humans are not worth their attention." Jake felt a sting of disappointment at her words, but he could not argue with them. Humanity was indeed very young compared to ancient civilizations like the ethereal dominion. Human technology was primitive by galactic standards, and Earth's governments did struggle with cooperation and peace. "But," the princess continued, "I have always wondered if my people might be wrong about humans. There are stories of human merchants who treat alien customers fairly, human diplomats who work hard for peace between different species, human soldiers who risk their lives to protect beings who are not even their own kind." The princess reached out and took Jake's hand in hers. Her skin felt cool and smooth like polished stone that had been left in the shade. "Now I know that those stories are true. You could have taken the data from my ship and left me to die alone. You could have claimed the glory of saving billions of lives. Instead, you chose to stay with a dying alien who can give you nothing in return." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "No one should have to face death alone," he said simply, outside the medical bay. They could hear Carlos working through the night to extract the vital information from the damaged data core. Amy Brooks was monitoring space communications, listening for any sign of the approaching ethereal fleet. Ryan Phillips had prepared emergency supplies in case they needed to evacuate quickly. Dr. Carter checked on the princess every hour, adjusting her pain medication and monitoring her declining vital signs. As the night wore on, Princess Zarilyn began teaching Jake words in her native language. The ethereal tongue was beautiful and complex, with sounds that seemed to come from deep in the throat and others that were barely whispers. Jake's human vocal cords could not produce the sounds perfectly, but the princess smiled each time he tried. "Your pronunciation is terrible," she said with gentle humor, "but your effort touches my heart." Near dawn, the princess began having trouble breathing. Her skin had turned completely gray now, and the last few patterns of light on her arms were flickering like candles in a strong wind. Dr. Carter gave her oxygen to help her breathe, but they all knew that the end was very close. Jake held the princess's hand and continued talking to her, telling her stories about Earth's seasons and how the leaves changed colors in autumn. He described snow falling in winter and flowers blooming in spring. The princess listened with her eyes closed, occasionally squeezing his hand to let him know she was still conscious. Just as the first light of dawn began to brighten the sky outside, warning alarms began sounding throughout the research station. Amy Brooks's voice came over the communication system with urgent news. "Ethereal fleet detected approaching our position," she announced. 12 large warships. They will be here within the hour." The ethereal fleet arrived like 12 moons hanging in the morning sky above the research station. Each ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel Jake had ever seen. They moved without sound through the atmosphere, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid metal in the sunlight of the twin suns. Princess Zarlin stirred weakly in her bed as the ships appeared overhead. "My uncle," she whispered, "Admiral Kethver has come for me." Within minutes, a smaller craft descended from the largest ship and landed near the research station. Jake watched through the medical bay window as tall figures in flowing robes emerged from the landing craft. The ethereals moved with perfect grace, their feet barely seeming to touch the ground as they approached the human buildings. Dr. Carter met the aliens at the main entrance while Jake remained with the princes. Through the communication system, they could hear the conversation taking place in the station's central room. The lead ethereal spoke in Galactic Standard, his voice cold and commanding. "I am Admiral Kethver of the Ethereal Dominion. We have come for Princess Zarlin. Bring her to us immediately." "Admiral," Dr. Carter replied respectfully, "the princess is severely injured and may not survive being moved. She needs immediate medical attention." "Then she will receive it aboard our ships where she belongs," the Admiral said firmly. "We do not leave our people in the care of primitive species." Jake felt anger rising in his chest at the Admiral's words, but Princess Zarlin squeezed his hand weakly. "Do not take offense," she whispered. "My people have always believed themselves superior to all others. They cannot understand that wisdom and compassion might exist in beings they consider beneath them." The conversation in the central room was becoming more heated. Dr. Carter was trying to explain the princess's medical condition, but the Admiral was growing impatient. "Enough," Kethver declared. "Stand aside and let us take what belongs to us." Jake heard footsteps approaching the medical bay. He stood up and moved to block the doorway just as Admiral Kethver appeared with 2 armed guards. The Admiral was tall and imposing, with the same blue-tinted skin as the princess but darker and more angular. His eyes were like chips of ice, and power seemed to radiate from his presence. "Move aside, human," the Admiral commanded. "You have no authority here." "She is under human protection," Jake said firmly, not moving from the doorway. "She came to us for help, and we will not abandon her." The Admiral's expression turned to one of contempt. "Protection? From primitives who cannot even save her life? Your medical technology is thousands of years behind ours. If she is dying, she will die with dignity aboard an ethereal vessel, not in this pathetic excuse for a medical facility." "She is not going anywhere," Jake replied, his voice steady despite his fear. "Not unless she chooses to go." "From her bed?" Princess Zarlin spoke weakly. "Uncle, please. These humans have shown me great kindness. They have asked for nothing in return and have stayed with me through my darkest hours." Admiral Kethver entered the room and looked down at his niece with cold eyes. "You were always too soft, Zarlin. Too willing to see good in inferior beings. It is this weakness that led to your current situation." The princess tried to sit up, but was too weak to move much. "Uncle, there is something more important than my life at stake here. The data core from my ship contains vital information about the Shadow Consortium's plans. These humans have been working to extract that data, but the work is not yet complete." "The data can wait," the Admiral said dismissively. "Your first duty is to your family and your people, not to the galaxy at large." Jake stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, billions of innocent lives depend on that information reaching the Galactic Council. Your niece nearly died trying to deliver it. Surely that means something to you." The Admiral turned his icy gaze on Jake. "It means she was foolish to attempt such a dangerous mission alone. It does not mean we should trust primitive humans with information of galactic importance." Carlos Martinez appeared in the doorway, his clothes dirty from working on the damaged data core all night. "Jake, I need to talk to you," he said urgently. Jake looked back at Princess Zarlin, who nodded weakly. He followed Carlos into the hallway, leaving Dr. Carter to monitor the tense conversation between the Admiral and his niece. "I have good news and bad news," Carlos said quietly. The good news is that I can extract the data from the core. The bad news is that it will take another 6 hours of careful work. If I rush it, the information could be corrupted or lost completely. Jake felt his heart sink. Princess Zarlin did not have 6 hours left. Her condition was deteriorating rapidly, and Dr. Carter had told him privately that she would likely die before the next sunset. There is something else, Carlos continued. The data core is booby-trapped. If anyone other than the princess tries to access it without the proper codes, it will destroy itself automatically. She would need to be conscious and alert to give me the access sequences. Jake returned to the medical bay where Admiral Kethver was preparing to take his niece back to the ethereal fleet. The Admiral had called for a medical transport team, and they were already setting up equipment to move. "The princess, Uncle, please," Princess Zarlin pleaded. "Give the humans time to complete their work. The information I carry could save countless lives." "Your concern for alien species is touching but misplaced," the Admiral replied coldly. "If you are destined to die, you will do so among your own people, not surrounded by primitives." Jake made a decision that surprised even himself. He moved to stand directly beside the princess's bed and took her hand in his. "I am not leaving her side," he announced to the Admiral. "If you want to take her back to your ship, you will have to take me with her." The Admiral's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You dare to make demands of the ethereal dominion?" "I am not making demands," Jake said calmly. "I am simply stating a fact. She should not have to face death alone, and I will not abandon her now." Princess Zarlin looked up at Jake with wonder in her star-filled eyes. "Jake, you cannot risk your life for me. Your people need you here." "My people will understand," Jake replied. "This is the right thing to do." The standoff continued for several tense hours. Admiral Kethver grew increasingly frustrated with Jake's refusal to step aside. The Admiral had the power to simply take the princess by force, but something in Jake's unwavering determination seemed to give him pause. Dr. Carter continued to monitor the princess's condition, which was steadily worsening. Her breathing became more labored, and the last few patterns of light on her skin were fading quickly. Carlos worked frantically on the data core, trying to extract the vital information before it was too late. As the afternoon wore on, Princess Zarlin began to drift in and out of consciousness more frequently. During her lucid moments, she spoke quietly with Jake about her childhood on the ethereal homeworld. She described crystal gardens where the plants sang in harmony with the wind, and cities built from living light that could reshape themselves according to their inhabitants' needs. "I always dreamed of traveling to other worlds and meeting different species," she told Jake. "My uncle and the royal court thought such interests were beneath my station. They believed that ethereals should only associate with other ethereals." Jake listened to her stories and shared more of his own memories of Earth. He told her about baseball games in summer stadiums, about camping under the stars in national parks, about the way his hometown looked when snow covered everything in winter. As evening approached, Carlos finally completed his work on the data core. He rushed into the medical bay with the extracted information stored on a portable device. "I have it," he announced breathlessly. "All the data about the Shadow Consortium's plans. It is ready to be transmitted to the Galactic Council." "Admiral." Kethver immediately reached for the device, but Princess Zarlin raised a weak hand to stop him. "Uncle, this information must go to the Council through proper channels. Do not let our family's politics interfere with the safety of billions of innocent beings." The Admiral hesitated, his duty to his niece conflicting with his contempt for the other species in the galaxy. After a long moment, he nodded curtly and stepped back. Princess Zarlin looked at Jake with gratitude shining in her fading eyes. "You have given me the greatest gift possible," she whispered. "You have shown me that compassion and honor can exist between any two beings, regardless of their species or origin." Jake squeezed her hand gently as her breathing became even more shallow. "Rest now," he said softly. "You have done everything you needed to do?" Princess Zarlin died just as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Her last words were spoken in perfect English, a simple "thank you" that seemed to hang in the air long after her final breath. Jake held her hand as the last. Patterns of light faded from her skin, leaving behind only pale blue flesh that looked like carved marble. Admiral Kethver stood silently at the foot of the bed for several long minutes. His cold expression had not changed, but something in his eyes seemed different. He finally reached down and gently closed his niece's eyes, then looked directly at Jake. "You stayed with her until the end," the Admiral said quietly, "even though you knew she could not be saved." Jake nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. He had known Princess Zarlin for less than 3 days, but her death felt like losing a close friend. There had been something special about her, a gentleness and wisdom that transcended the barriers between their species. The Admiral called for his medical team to prepare the princess's body for transport back to the ethereal fleet. As they worked, he stood beside Jake in the hallway outside the medical bay. For the first time since his arrival, the Admiral seemed uncertain about something. "Human," he said finally, "I do not understand your actions. You could have taken the data and claimed credit for saving billions of lives. Instead, you chose to comfort a dying alien who could offer you nothing in return. Why?" Jake looked through the window at Princess Zarlin's still form. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "No one should have to die alone." And afraid, the Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "In our culture, nobility is measured by bloodline and achievement. Those of royal birth are considered inherently superior to common citizens. Yet in 3 days, you have displayed more honor than most members of our royal court have shown in their entire lives." The ethereal medical team carefully placed the princess's body in a stasis chamber that would preserve it for the journey home. Admiral Kethver supervised the process personally, ensuring that his niece was treated with the dignity befitting her royal status before departing. The Admiral approached Jake one final time. "The data you helped extract will be delivered to the Galactic Council immediately. The Shadow Consortium's plans will be stopped, and billions of lives will be saved because of your actions. However, I suspect that is not what matters most to you." Jake shook his head. "I just wanted to make sure she was not alone at the end." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Perhaps my people have been wrong about humanity. I will remember what I have witnessed here." The ethereal fleet departed as silently as it had arrived, taking Princess Zarlin home to her crystal world among the stars. Jake stood outside the research station and watched the ships disappear into the darkness of space. He felt empty and sad, as if something important had been taken from his life. Admiral Kethver returned to the ethereal capital world of Lirale with his niece's body and a detailed report of the events on Kepler 442b, the Council of Crystalline. Wisdom received the news of the princess's death with their usual cold formality. Most council members were more interested in the successful recovery of the data about the Shadow Consortium than in the circumstances of how their royal family member had died. However, Princess Zarlin had left behind more than just her body and the vital intelligence data. Hidden in her personal effects was a small recording device that contained detailed logs of her final 3 days. The princess had used the device to document her experiences with the human research team, creating a record that would shake the foundations of ethereal society. Elder Salandra, the oldest and most respected member of the council, discovered the recordings while reviewing the princess's personal effects. As the senior archivist of royal history, it was her duty to preserve all records related to members of the ruling family. What she found in those recordings changed everything she thought she knew about alien species. The recordings showed Jake Morrison displaying a level of compassion and selflessness that Elder Salandra had never seen from any being, ethereal or otherwise. She watched in amazement as the human sacrificed sleep and comfort to care for a dying alien. She saw him share his own food when the princess could barely eat. She heard him singing lullabies in a language he did not understand, simply because it brought comfort to someone in pain. Most shocking of all, the recordings revealed that Jake had actually retrieved the vital data on the very first night, but had chosen to stay with Princess Zarlin rather than rush off to deliver it. He had put the comfort of one dying individual above the glory of saving billions of lives. Elder Salandra called for an emergency session of the full council to review the recordings. The assembled ethereal leaders watched in stunned silence as the story unfolded. Many of them had never seen such pure compassion displayed by anyone, let alone by a member of what they considered a primitive species, Council Member Thelaran, who had always been the most vocal opponent of contact with alien species, sat with his mouth open as he watched Jake hold the princess's hand during her final moments. "This cannot be real," he whispered. No inferior being would act with such selflessness. But Elder Salandra had verified the authenticity of the recordings using every method available to their advanced technology. The images and sounds were completely genuine, with no signs of manipulation or deception. As the council debated the implications of what they had seen, word of the recordings began to spread throughout ethereal society. The princess had been popular among the common people, who had always admired her interest in alien cultures and her compassionate nature. When they learned how she had died and how the human Jake Morrison had cared for her, their reaction was immediate and powerful. Protests began in the capital city of Australan, with thousands of ethereals demanding answers from their government. How could their leaders have dismissed an entire species that was capable of such nobility? Why had the royal court not sent medical assistance when they learned of the princess's condition? How many other alien species had they misjudged over the centuries? The protests grew larger each day as more ethereals watched the recordings of Princess Zaralan's final hours. Citizens who had never questioned their government's policies toward alien species began to demand major changes in how the Dominion interacted with the rest of the galaxy. Elder Salandra found herself at the center of a political storm unlike anything in recent ethereal history. The recordings had exposed fundamental flaws in their society's assumptions about other forms of life. If humans, whom they had dismissed as primitive and violent, could produce individuals capable of such honor and compassion, what did that say about ethereal prejudices toward other species? The council faced increasing pressure to respond to the growing unrest. Some members called for the recordings to be classified and hidden from the public, arguing that they threatened the stability of ethereal society. Others, led by Elder Salandra, insisted that the truth could not be suppressed and that major reforms were necessary. The debate raged for weeks as protests continued to grow throughout the Dominion. Other alien species, learning of the recordings through galactic news networks, began to watch humanity with new interest. If the proud and ancient ethereals were reconsidering their attitudes toward humans, perhaps it was time for others to do the same. The Shadow Consortium's bioweapon plot was successfully thwarted using the intelligence that Princess Zaralan had died to deliver. Coordinated strikes by multiple species destroyed the weapon production facilities, and the mechanical beings retreated to the edge of the galaxy to regroup. Billions of lives were saved, just as the princes had hoped, but Jake Morrison never sought credit for his role in stopping the conspiracy. When news reports mentioned his actions, he refused all interview requests and continued his quiet research work on Kepler 442b. He had not stayed with the dying princess for glory or recognition. He had done it because he believed it was right. The galactic community began to take notice of humanity in ways they never had before. The story of Jake Morrison and Princess Zaralan spread from world to world, carried by traders and diplomats who marveled at the human capacity for compassion. Species that had previously ignored or dismissed humanity began sending diplomatic missions to Earth and human colonies. Elder Salandra made a decision that would echo through history. Standing before the full council of crystalline wisdom, she spoke words that would be carved into crystal monuments throughout the ethereal dominion. In 3 days, this human showed more honor than our own court showed in 3 centuries. Perhaps we have been wrong about the nature of nobility. The revolution that began with Princess Zaralan's recordings spread through ethereal society like ripples across a still pond. Elder Salandra's words before the council became a rallying cry for those who demanded change. The ancient caste System that had separated royalty from common citizens for thousands of years began to crack under the pressure of citizens, who had seen true nobility displayed by an alien they had been taught to consider inferior within months of the princesses' death. The ethereal dominion launched its first diplomatic missions to alien worlds in over a century. Ships that had once carried only conquest and trade now brought scientists, artists, and philosophers eager to understand other forms of consciousness. The proud ethereals, who had kept themselves isolated in their crystal cities for so long, suddenly wanted to learn about the galaxy beyond their borders. Jake Morrison continued his research work on Kepler 442b, seemingly unaware of the massive changes his simple act of compassion had set in motion. He received hundreds of messages from across the galaxy from beings of dozens of different species who wanted to thank him or learn more about human culture. He answered a few politely but declined most requests for interviews or appearances. 6 months after Princess Zerlin's death, a gleaming, ethereal diplomatic vessel landed at the Human Research Station. Jake watched from his laboratory window as a familiar figure emerged from the ship. Admiral Kethver had returned, but this time he came not as a military commander but as an official ambassador of his people. "Jake Morrison," the admiral said, when they met in the station's main conference room, "I have come to formally invite you to visit the ethereal homeworld as an honored guest of our people." Jake was surprised by the offer. "Admiral, I appreciate the invitation, but I am just a researcher. I do not think I would make a very good diplomat." The admiral's expression was warmer than Jake remembered from their first meeting. "You would not be coming as a diplomat. You would be coming as a teacher. My people need to learn about the compassion you showed my niece. We need to understand how beings from different worlds can care for each other despite their differences." The invitation came with offers of wealth, titles, and honors that would have made Jake one of the richest humans in the galaxy. The ethereals wanted to build a monument in his honor and establish a new order of knighthood based on the principles of cross-species compass.